Long days and pleasant nights. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our walk along the beams with our my co-host and my quartet. We got Trev, Steve, Phil, and Aaron at the bottom. This is our part two. We are finishing this book, this massive book. I'm going to touch base with the chat, and then we're going to get into it because we got a lot to get into.
Hey,
somebody's getting interference.
Yeah, I think that might be you, man.
How about now?
Yeah,
it's good. I think it was just coming loose.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was some weird feedback.
All right.
I think it's the
Sorry about that. So we have Robin first. It probably is. We had Las Cruces.
That would be horrible sound if that was the Thinny.
Yeah, I hope not. Hey, Cheney. Hi, Cheney.
What's up, Cheney? Thanks for coming back.
Heck yeah, twice in a row. Yeah, I know, Robin. I was trying to add Aaron right in as we did the intro, and it didn't quite mix in together. All right, so, we got Brian. What's up, Brian? Hi, Brian.
Hey.
We got Tina. What's up, Tina? Hi, Tina.
Brian tomorrow Sunday.
Your OG-ness.
Got Durs. What's up, Durs?
Catching him live earlier.
All right, so it looks to be everybody, and I'll touch base with people as they come in. All right, so Wizard and Glass Part 2, we started at the Come Reap part. It was basically 340 to the end, and again, this one's set up in just massive chapters. Pretty much from page 340 all the way to 661 was this whole massive part, and it's broken in all these little sub chapters, but really it's one massive chapter. So Come Reap, we are back to our love story, our boring love story, as Roland states. That we see that the younger quartet is a little broken due to Roland's love affair with Susan, playing the most deadly game of castles ever, which for most people, castles is chess. Roland, his quartet, finally counts horses. The quartet have to threaten a witch, eventually besting our quartet. The coffin hunters catch Roland and his gang of murdering donkey thieves, and that's where we're going to leave it off of, and I want to break into my first questions. So my first question is, the Ka is said to be like a will. What are some things in this story overall that reflect past, present, stuff like that? We learn a lot in this prequel story that Ka is a will, and it's brought up a lot. What are the reflections from the present day quartet that reflect on that? Let's go with Phil first. That's who I got on
the. Sorry I missed everybody last week, by the way. I will say this. I found myself listening to Soundgarden's Never the Machine Forever, and I was like, oh, that sounds like it's about Blaine.
Incidentally, I was listening to the same thing, kind of.
There we go.
That album.
There we go. It's the quartet. I mean, as far as Will goes, I think the whole issue, and I'm going to start off by saying, and I don't know if we're going to get into that yet or at all, this entire section gave me a completely different look at Roland, and not in the best way. And I'm hoping that it's not indicating things to come. I know that if I were part of the quartet, I would be like, maybe we really have to watch this guy and see what's going on. But as far as Will goes, I mean, I think as far as Will goes, I think it's up for debate, and I assume we'll get into that later on. But right now, at this point in the story, you could say that, Roland is seemingly abandoning his position or his post because, hey, look, I want to hang out with Susanna, and apparently, from the way everybody describes her, who could blame him?
All right. Steve, let's go with you next.
I'm trying to think about this stuff because I mean, like, yeah, these guys are.
Cause said to be like a wheel. What are some things that reflect this from the past, or the present content?
Are you thinking,
or if any, if you know, I mean, you might not have noticed any. This is.
Are you thinking of like the time, like, from, you know, because this is a reflection. This is Roland with Eddie and that group talking about his past and explaining to them. You mean like between the two of them, the two groups, right? It's kind of like, you know, you got the two quartets and they're both kind of the same thing. So if you think about with Alan and Cuthbert, he's got them again. It's like they're reincarnated with Eddie and Susanna, and then Jake thrown in the mix, right? So it's kind of like the wheel. Like these guys are, you know, they all got sacrificed at some point in time. Jericho Hill, that's like way down the line. Everybody's dead. Roland's the only one left. And it seems like he needs his people again, and the wheels rolled around, and here they are again, reincarnated, if you want to put it that way. But it's kind of neat with him being, you know, showing them when he's young, and he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He's learning, and he's up against Jonas and the Coffin Hunters, and they're disgraced gunslingers that have been sent west by Court's dad. Yeah, that whole freaking reel of car. Okay, I'll leave it there.
Right. Pretty good then, but then you know you're getting there. Aaron, let's go with you next.
I think about
that one.
I guess like how Elaine, you know, was caring so much about, you know, Roland, and how that's kind of like Susanna with them caring for them, and Cuthbert, you know, being like Eddie. Like smacking Roland into sense, having some sense, trying to do the right thing, wasn't supposed to. So like the wheels, like the same things happening over that had happened in the past. Like he's dealt with the same type of people and the same types of circumstances and reactions and everything everyone's having. It's a wheel.
I love it. Trev?
Yeah, I thought it was kind of cool how he really didn't have to write two new characters. He just had Eddie and Susanna, basically them as new characters. I thought that was pretty cool. Jake, I thought Suzanne was kind of like Jake, to where she was the one that was kind of fawning over Roland, kind of had starry eyes for Roland, and she was the one that was sacrificed.
That's a cool twist there, Trev. I didn't even think about that. That's brilliant. I was trying to figure out how Jake fit in there.
And a little bit, and touch a base on that because I mean, and it's kind of, but with Shimi too, right? Because Shimi instantly, like, even though he was hesitant around Roland, in the end, he had said, like, for some strange reason that he was, you know, in love with Roland and his quartet. You know, like a reflection of the white, maybe, you know, and maybe
Shimmy kind of was the reflection of oh gosh, why am I blanking on
yeah, I was thinking about it.
Come on.
The little animal.
Yeah. There you go, Oi. And to the exact reflection, because some of them are not exact, right? Because I mean, you could say Eddie and Cuthbert, yes, but Cuthbert is the reason why some of the debacle goes wrong, right? Eddie, on the other hand, has been the savior of multiple occasions already. You know, drawing the key, the one to put down Blaine. You know, so some of the reflections are not exactly. You know, I would say they're rippled, but exactly with Shimi and Oi and the usefulness that King is able to incorporate in such a minor character kind of thing, because Shimi plays out to be a huge part of, you know, the successfulness of the book, I would say.
Do we get to see
everyone in the quartet pretty much has a match from his quartet in the past.
What were you saying, Trev?
Do we get to see Shimi again?
Do we? You know, he's mentioned that you know, he eventually became a squire with a. So I'm not gonna say yes or no on that one, but we might see some Shimmy again. You know, I don't King. You know, we're gonna see some Shimmy again. He's actually one of my favorite characters. And this is a side note because there is a little more Shimmy in the book, but for those of you that have not partaken in the comic book version of this story, this is where the comic is focused on, is this book specifically.
Yeah.
And the comic does, we get to see a lot more of Shimi's tale in the comic. So if you're interested in
I
Shimi
think
and you
he's
like,
also in Wind Through the Keyhole, isn't he? Yeah.
Okay, and but yes, there, and I mean that goes without. Stephen King spoils it himself because he kind of mentions like twice that Shimi's going to show up, like more than what he did, kind of thing. He kind of says it a little bit in the afterword too. Uh, he's spoiling a lot at this point. You know, he's really focusing on the story. I could say that.
But Shimmy's awesome.
Shimi's awesome. And it's funny because your first, probably, you know, in your first recollection of reading Shimi, he's such a small, minor character, you know, that like from every occasion you meet Shimi, even the first time they kind of ran into him in the bar, he always sparks huge things, you know, like every time his character's there. I mean, yeah, we'll get to it. All right, so my next question, and we're gonna go with Aaron first on this one. Um, for if it is called. It'll come like a wind, and your plans will stand before it, no more than a barn in a cyclone, said by Senor Pat Delgado. Um, have we seen this with the current quartet, though, right? It's a huge motif in the past and the love story with Susan. She says it many times to Roland. It actually comes from Cordelia first. Well, what are
Roland,
some?
Jake. Um, yeah, probably Roland to Jake, and also Eddie to Suzanne.
Exactly, Jane. That all you got?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Trev, you're up
I guess
next.
I didn't understand what you were asking.
Basically the motif, it caused like a wind, that once it comes in, it just, there is no, you know, it's like a storm, it blows, there's
Mhm.
nothing you can really do to, you know, you can put on a raincoat and umbrella, but the rainstorm's still gonna come, right? That is kind of the motif of Ka, or luck, or fate, as you know, that it kind of has many names. So how have we seen that with the current content, that they're having to face this, I'm gonna make you big real quick. You know, how have we seen the Shimi and his what was the cap? Damn,
The
I'm
donkey.
drawing a blank. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
drawing a
like
name.
it was a
Cap
it was a good name,
Capicorus.
something like that.
That's Shimi attacking the Crimson King.
What? No.
Who's that?
All right, so Trev, you got any examples in our current quartet how they come across cause like a win? You know, have we come across Ka like that with the current quartet? Because I mean, in this story, overall, I mean, I can't even count how many elements of this story is basically linked to Ka. Like the
Mhm.
reason this happens, the reason that happens, you know, and it's all, you could say coincidental, but in a story when it coincidental names itself Ka, you know, I mean, that's all. I mean, so how have we seen moments like that in the past? Kind of reflections of what we read in the past, kind of.
Mm,
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Okay, let's give you some examples of some thought, right? We have some introductions of our new characters, our new quartet, Roland, Eddie, Jake, you know. What were some things that were Ka related in their past? Like, you know, Roland and Susan were taken. Was Jake? You know, I mean, that's an easy starting point. What was his?
See, I would argue that almost everything that has happened up until
Mhm.
now, as far as them meeting, um, the different conflicts that they've overcome, are Ka. But to that end, and I'm going to talk about this later on, you know, if we have the opportunity, I think part of the dilemma whether Roland or anybody else realizes it or not, is that in this chapter, I think Roland inadvertently, I guess for lack of a better word, or just kind of stay in the same conversation, changed Ka or altered Ka.
Is that a possibility? Do we think could even be happening or has happened? I mean, if Ka is like a wind and you can't really battle it, do we, at this moment in the story, believe that some things have been changed? Like maybe him saving Jake and successfully.
For sure.
I think the whole premise has changed.
I love it. I love it. Let's go.
You can definitely feel the Man in Black trying to interfere.
Oh really? Per se. What? Say that again. You know, and so Phil can hear you, and then go off on that, Aaron, because you're next up.
Well, just everything's set like you were saying. There's nothing they can really do about it. It's the will of Ka, and everything is Ka, so everything's gonna happen the way it happens. But the Man in Black, he's definitely helping the black, or he's helping the wrong side of the white, and Roland's on the white, or the red, sorry, and then Roland, he's on the white. He's trying to, I guess, it's almost like a tug of war. So like it's a tug of war, and they're just trying to keep both sides from falling, I guess, or either side from winning. It's kind of.
You started to go where I want you to. Let's see if maybe Trev.
Well, you're talking about calls like a wheel, like everything is a wheel. So every time something positive happens, something negative has to happen. So the Man in Black's just there to kind of like balance. And even if you changes something new that's bad might happen. So what goes around comes around.
Let me ask you something.
Exactly. Cause of will.
Let me ask you something kind of going with what Trev is saying. And I know you guys are probably not going to answer this yet because we're probably not going to learn this yet. Being that we're dealing with time and going back and forth and whatnot, is the Crimson King an older version of Roland?
I can neither confirm nor deny, but I just point at that guy down there. He was kind of. I'm gonna just say no. That he's not.
It's a good question to have, because I mean, you should be asking questions like that because we don't really know.
Yeah.
And,
But I will relieve that burden from your mind. The Crimson King is a separate entity, and Trev. That was one of Trev's first question: is Walter like a future incantation of Roland? And I mean, at this point, all possibilities. All things could. But no. And at this point, they are separate entities. So I mean, there is a definite evil. I will say that there's a definite good, but it's like layered because we have the white, we have Ka, and Ka's. I mean, if you look, okay, so we talk about Ka as far as like the good with the quartet and blah blah, but what about the other side of quartet, right? Because quartet, quartet, Ka actually helped out the bad side in many instances, right? I mean. Randall, Walter, Martin, he just happens to be at the right places at the right time. Jonas and his crew, even Cordelia. I mean, why, if Ka is meant to be a good thing and all these things are supposed to happen, why even have the red side of Ka kind of thing? Is Ka helping out the Crimson King in the same sense?
I don't think Ka is meant to be good or bad. I think it's just supposed to be like the.
And another one thing I caught this time, but not last time, was they mentioned Sullivan, or what was her name? Sullivan, the witch from Toll, the priestess
Sylvia.
Yeah, Sylvia Pliskin.
They mentioned her that she had came through town, or Yeah, she had come through town, and so like that was before she had gotten to Toll.
hmm And when we get her mentioning, she's just mentioned as like a crazy, like religious person, but she's not mentioned as like evil or she rubbed people the wrong way or anything. She just mentioned that she kind of passed through like uneventful kind of thing, tried to spread the good word about the Crimson, um, it didn't
Caused
state all that.
Cornelia to start singing that weird song that she was singing as she sung through town.
Yes, yes. And then we got careless love throughout the whole book, which is kind of a nice thing. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but every time I hear careless love, I'm not thinking about careless love. I'm thinking about careless whisper and thinking about George Michael and shit. I was thinking,
Hey Jude.
right? No, that
Yeah.
that comes up a lot. That must have been Stephen King's like favorite song during this time. Okay, let's get back on track. All right, so next question we got. During the time when Roland and his quartet, his younger quartet in the past, are captured, they're easily snuck up on. Why is this? And we're gonna go with let's go with Phil first.
When they're captured, trying to remind me exactly what point this was. Was this when they? Am I thinking ahead when they were away from their house?
They were coming back. They were like the ambush was by the town was set up and everything by I forget the Special K or whatever it was called, the Bar K, but as they were going back, everybody was set up kind of like old Western style, like ambush or whatever in the bushes and everything. But even to the point where like people were standing like pretty close to him and they didn't even notice that people were standing close to him. And I mean, we've been talking about Ka and this and that. Like, I mean, but on another note, like, we're talking about gunslingers and Roland. Like, I mean, we're talking about in the first three books, it's mentioned that Eddie was like one of the few, and Susan was one of the few that were able to sneak up on this dude. I mean, we're talking about young, virile, like you know, I mean, action ready, Roland, and they were able to sneak up on him. Why?
I can't remember this part. I don't know why.
It's the part that they get captured. Like,
What
hey,
happened to the balloons?
you're on an iPhone. No. Um, what do you call it?
I don't know how this is going. I'm not doing it.
All right. So okay. So Phil, let's go to Trev. You got? Do you remember this part? First off, you muted
It was the Poon Annie.
the Puna. Oh,
He's
now that
he was just lovesick at that point, and they thought they had everything planned out. They underestimated the coffin hunters.
mm, that's what because the first part of your explanation only explains Roland, but what about Alan and Cuthbert? You know, I mean,
I
what is
think Alan and Cuthbert at that point, Roland had his plan that was a day later that it was going to affect. So they were, like I said, they underestimated the coffin hunters. They
you hit it on.
they had their plan, and they're like they're underestimating us. This is our plan.
It wasn't really the coffin hunters. I don't mean to interrupt. It was the man in black, really interfering, because the coffin hunters would have never have been able to beat him. They would have lost if it was just the
Yeah,
coffin
they did have that.
hunters.
They did have that little bit of information. No, but
The man in
yeah,
black was turning wheels behind the scenes, and like you said, help evil come through this time.
that's I mean a huge question that posed a bigger question after that, and we'll get there. But uh, Trev, you really hit it on the nail. I mean, yes, you know, with Jonas and the Big Coffin Hunters wouldn't have been able to capture them like they did without the help of Randall or Walter at that time. But the group is distracted, and yes, the easier explanation is Roland is love, defounded or whatever. But then we have the other two groups, and what's with them? And it's the first time when like Roland comes to him with the plan. You know, they finally like confront him after the whole like messiness that has been going on, and they finally get talk out of Roland. And I think that, it's like Trev said, they were like so dumbfounded that they had a plan. They weren't even thinking about anything else. They were like, "Hell yeah, we're yeah, we went to go count some horses finally," you know. um, yeah, I did. Okay, let's go move Steve. Before I move on, does anybody else have anything else to add to this? Because there could be some other elements at play, you know.
Could it be that when there's disharmony among the quartet, they're when they're not working, I guess you could say, all as one, their awareness or powers, for lack of a better word, just aren't on point.
These guys are firing on all cylinders. Phil, you're exactly right.
Coffee.
Maybe that's what it is. What kind of water you got in the coffee tonight?
It's real simple. Yep.
Yeah. And go ahead, Steve. You do.
They're young and they're inexperienced. That's the big thing right there. And they're cocky. You know, they've been in this town for how many months now? They're in a rhetoric. They're doing the same thing over and over, and they're getting cocky. And that's what happens. You get cocky, you get sloppy, you don't have your head on a swivel. And then they're distracted on top of it. Like Trev said, got some poontang going on there. And that's Roland being distracted. But what are the other two distracted? Because they're worried about Roland. So they're distracted in that regard, and they're not paying attention. And they're young. But that's the main thing, is because they're young and inexperienced. That's why they got taken so easily.
Mm-hmm.
Roland even makes a point to say that he'll never get stuck up on that like that again.
Oh yeah, that's the last time. Yeah, and the handcuffs, and we do see up until that point that, as far as we know, that's never happened like that again. I can't confirm or deny that he never gets taken again. No.
They would have never second guessed the boys if it wasn't for Rhea, though, because Rhea made
there was a lot of elements.
Her aunt suspicious, and her aunt told Jonas
the whole no when they had to go confront Rhea and Roland killing Ermont. I mean, there was many things that led to that, but going back to what Phil said, Phil brought up something super important, and we hadn't really seen discussed, because we know that the quartet receives powers once they are official as a quartet, right? They're linked within their minds. Some of them are gifted to touch or born, blah, blah. Okay, so Phil talks about the negativity of that, right? And if the quartet's not 100%, what are the side effects of that? And that could be another, because they weren't firing on all cylinders. Roland was off doing his thing. Even though it's perceived as cause, is it really the right thing? And we kind of see motifs throughout the book that it's not, right? I mean, from get-go, it's not the right thing. Aaron, you got anything you want to throw down on it?
Well, maybe, I was thinking about the pink.
Ooh. Ooh.
Maybe having influence, the pink grapefruit, maybe, but having a glamour over everything. But
it's a good motif. Another one we haven't touched base on, but
maybe
we do have
just
magic at play, right?
Yeah.
Maybe instantly, maybe the grapefruit being near Susan and Will Dearborn, maybe that was all that, but I do want to say that the grapefruit plays a major part in it. A lot of things, right, Rhea? We'll get there with Roland, though, because Roland has a lot to do. All right, so that's pretty much. So we go to our next. It's still within the same chapter. It's a lot of reading, but basically at this time, the guys are captured. We're having Shimi and Susan and Maria. Don't forget Maria. Break out the boys from jail after Susan takes out the posse of sheriffs, setting their final plan in motion. Susan goes on one path, and the quartet go after the tankers and a grapefruit. The quartet go through more than 100 men, 300 style, killing off the coffin hunters and all of Farson's men, destroying the tankers, grapefruit, In hand, Roland is sucked inside and shown new purpose with a choice. Through all the mess, Susan is captured and sadly is burned alive by Rhea and Aunt Cordelia in the town of Mages. The boys take the grapefruit back to Gilead, and that's leading up to our final part of the story. But there was a lot that goes into this. So basically, we're starting out with the breakout of the guys, and basically it's from there. It's the guys kind of setting forth the motion. Their plan and everything. My first question is going to be, we're going to talk about the grapefruit, right? What is the wizard's rainbow? What is the relationship between the white and the rainbow, if any? Why have these things? And we know a little bit, we're told a little bit about the rainbow, and we know that some other pieces of the rainbows exist. And even in the present, we kind of see that some of the rainbows still exist. So, what's the relationship between the white and the rainbow? And Aaron, I'm going you first, buddy.
All right, so we're just told, that there's guardians, and with all the guardians, like there's the rainbow, and or each one to represent it, and the pink one can look. You can look and see anything in your world, like and the other rainbows, could look and see everything in other worlds, and it could see where the worlds that the old ones went to. It could see. You could see the future. Through some. You could see the past through some. So every one of them is different, and then there's one that represented the tower, and that was the black. And that Roland used to tell, campfire stories of that one, and they would scare each other as kids about it, and I guess what I'll just get to is this: the pink grapefruit. You can see what's in the world you're in, anything in the world you're in, but you can only see the bad parts of what people are doing.
Shows deepest desires, but only of evil intent, basically,
Yeah, all evil. Yeah.
for the most part, right? For the most part. So, what
So
about
as
this?
far as lining with the black and the white, or the red and the white, it's red, pink. It's lining. I mean, it seems to line more with the red.
Let me, because I forgot a little bit, because there is another addition to these that we learn, right? That they were made by Merlin, a wizard, right? And of all incantations of Merlin, he is said to be of the good, the white, right? So far as we know. We are told definitions of wizards, sorcerers, and bumhugs. Okay, so with that definition, Merlin being of the white and good, why make these things? And each one of them, we're told, kind of has evil intent. What's the connection to the white? Kind of like this is supposed to be seen as Sauron's rings of power, right? The eye, right? And
Maybe
Sauron had a clear and present reason on creating the other rings, so he could control them and stuff. So,
See,
what was Merlin?
it's kind of a way for the good to be able to see what the evil is doing, and what the evil's maybe weaknesses, and why there should be white. It's maybe for a tool for the white, but shows what the red is doing.
I like that. I like that. Let's go with Trev next. Let's see what a new reader.
Does it
We
does he say how he creates them ever? Like
in
could
a
he have sealed something, pieces of something into
Ooh, I like that. I like that because
like
we do see multiple representations of like things that are caught within glass that represent the rainbow, right? Because of the gate at the very end of the story, they come up to the gate that's protecting the Emerald Palace, and it's filled with cylinders of glass with like horrible kind of creatures in them. So
Mhm.
maybe
So maybe he did that to kind of contain something or
I like that. Like they're all like nasty mythical beasts or demons, or and Merlin, he didn't make them. They're actually like prisons. I like that. I like that. And that's why looking into them grants an evil, Steve, what you got? What you got, Steve? What you?
All right, let's take it back. Back in the
Mm-hmm.
70s, there was a cool band, and I saw it on an 8-track. You guys might not know what an 8-track is. It's
What's
like
that?
a cassette tape, and you throw it in. It's got 8 tracks on it. There's a band called Prism.
Oh,
So how do you get the different colors? It starts with white light, goes into a
does.
prism, and then outside of that prism comes all the different colors. So everything starts from the white, and then all those colors come out of that. So the good, the bad, everything. So it's a kind of a metaphor for that, right? So all of those grapefruits Merlin probably took from the white, and he created. And yeah, the intent probably wasn't for evilness, but Merlin's more of a science kind of guy. So he's not thinking good, evil. He's just thinking of creation. And if you get stuff that's bad, I mean, these things are sentient. So who knows what kind of malevolent magic is happening? We're talking centuries, millennia later, and what these things have been corrupted over the time, and how many people have been in possession of these things over the years. So it causes a
Mhm.
lot of trouble over the time. But yeah, the creation of them, it would start with the white, go through a prism, and then there you have the rainbow.
And you're right.
Ooh.
What happens when you mix all them colors together? You get the black 13, right?
And then that one
Um,
had some weird things going through it. That's representing, yeah, the darkness out there that wants to encroach upon our universe and take it down.
Phil, you got anything you want to throw down on this?
Yeah, no, I have a couple of things. How many different colors are there? I just thought of a different connection too. It's the white, the red, the
13.
black.
It's 13.
13. Okay, now that throws my other theory out of the door. But kind of sticking with what Steve just said with the prism. First of all, I think each color is neither inherently good or evil. Because if you think about a wheel and if you think about balance, what may be evil to one side is good to the other, and vice versa. The best way I could relate it to comics, and you're going to have to forgive me if this is a loose association, because it's been a while since I've read either Animal Man or Swamp Thing. If you go back to the New
The
52
red,
run,
the green.
exactly. And one of the main things I remember about that story is that it was important that all of these colors, all of these sides remain in balance. To this end, I see the tower not as a manifestation of any particular color, good or evil. I see the tower itself as the prism. And when we're saying walking along the beams, this is the simple, I guess you could say, color that this particular quartet is walking along. Maybe these other groups that we're encountering, um, the coffins and whatnot, maybe they're part of a different quartet that's on a different beam. Now, why are they fighting to get to the prism? That I don't know yet. But I do have a theory regarding the grapefruit specifically, that really has changed my perspective of the entire story. I don't know if it's too early to bring it up or not, or if this is the right time. You tell me.
Hmm. Maybe we'll leave it at
One,
the end.
one,
Prediction.
one thing I like that you were bringing up was when you
Oh,
okay, when you spread all the colors out, what do you get? White.
hmm
When you pull all the colors together, what do you get? Black.
Black.
So I think, the white wants the balls to be spread out, broke apart, lost, gone, because they know the white knows if the balls are brought, are brought together, that's
Could be
when
something really
black
bad.
or yeah, red could take over.
Well, Phil, what you said earlier, you're exactly right. All the color representations are kind of what, the tower is seen as black. All the beams are said to be like a certain, they're tied to a Merlin grapefruit. So you would have to assume that the beam that they're on represents the color that they're on, and we know what beam they're on. We're on the turtle beam, so I mean their beam would be green or the opposite, depending on if that guardian is taken over. I mean it could be a spider. Okay, so this leads to my next question, and we're still dealing with colors, but we have a lot of color things, right? A lot of color things. We have at least 5 that I can think of offhand, but I'm pretty sure there was a lot more. Um, why red and pink for bad? Pink is seen as a sexualized color within the series so far. I mean, it started all the way back in Toll, right? As soon as our dude, the Walking Man, walking to town, people were, seeing a pink color and kind of touching themselves in weird ways. But that is carried all the way over to this grapefruit, right? And the second Rhea, the coos touched this thing, she felt, pretty moist, and she hadn't felt moist in years. Well, what's with the theme of red and pink? And red's kind of the easier one, so if you want to touch base on that, it's fine. But we're gonna go Steve first on this one.
Yeah, the reds, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, blood, death,
Mhm.
destruction, that's pretty straightforward. The pink one, I guess, would be a little more complicated. The pink haze, purple haze, pink haze. I don't know. These
Oh.
are some deep questions there, Evil.
Mhm.
Deep questions. Crap. Yeah, we know
Well,
with the red.
Well,
Go
it said,
ahead.
what do they show? What does the pink show? The corruptedness. So the corruptedness is the town, and what they did.
Well,
Right?
I
There's
like where you're going, but think about it.
The whole story is corruptedness. Corruptedness. Pink is corruptedness.
But okay, so think about it like this, because sex is seen normally in this with the pink theme, and that's gone all the way back to Allie and including with Susan. So we have both spectrums. We have actually all 3. We have like bad spectrums of the pink. We have neutral, which would have been Allie. Like Roland didn't really want that; he just did it, and he believed it was because of Ka. But then we have Susan, and Susan is like the wanted pink. So in that context, we see that not just one color has, like you had stated before, that there is like that the red would see itself as doing evil as good, and vice versa. In context of that, how is it seen as what's the theme for pink? Why is it seen as bad? Even though demonstrated within the series, it's seen as a neutral. Trev?
Maybe because the demon moon, isn't the demon moon red?
Changes
Yeah.
colors. It goes. The peddler was white, and then orange, and the demon. That's. I think that. I mean, it is a motif of the story at hand. Every time the story increases, so does the moon. All the way to the demon moon, which was the worst with the child.
But yeah, pink is in the middle of white and red, so it's kind of like the
The
center
diluted.
point. It can be
The in
both.
between.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the in between, the middle ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Faded red.
if I can, going off of what Trev said, and I apologize if this is annoying, let me know. I was trying to tie it back to comics, and I was immediately drawn to Jeff Johns' Green Lantern run when you went from green and yellow to, I think there were like 15
Pink and purple
rings,
and
right,
blue
right,
and white.
indigo.
Full spectrum.
Red was rage. White was, for lack of a better description, peace. What Trev just said, where pink is between the two, I think he's spot on, because I think if you take rage and you water it down a little bit with peace, what do you get? You get passion. So I think this pink
there we go.
is
Passion.
like passion, but not necessarily just sexual passion. I think it's temptation.
Yes.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
And that fits
Yeah.
Susanna almost perfectly, I guess, if you could put it in as far as Roland goes.
Mhm.
What the hell is in your coffee, bro? I'm
That's
telling
awesome.
you,
Yeah.
Firehouse Hilton.
About spot on.
Yeah, yes, because I mean, you think about it as far as you being 16 in love with the girl or the guy, you know, and I mean, from the outside world, and it's stated in the second part of this reading that true love for the people going through it is an amazing journey and fantastic, but everybody else watching it is either not fun or boring or you just lose your friends, kind of thing. And passion can be seen like that, right? I mean, you could have like moments of passion that are good, moments of passion that are bad. I mean, and it kind of, I mean, in our world, do we not? I mean, we have a slogan, right? And it's kind of used in many different ways, but sex sells, right? It's a huge American slogan. I mean, that that in itself can be used in good and evil spectrums, that pink is always right there. But it's been a huge motif since we started reading, and it's
Mhm.
going to play a bigger one. I mean, especially with this one, we got the whole pink grapefruit, right? And that was like a kind of a background focus that started small and turned into something big, right? Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, next
And
question.
are we going to learn anything else about the woman licking the corners?
A lot. She pops up like 18 more. No, 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 no.
Like,
That was your
what
boy.
the hell is
That
that?
that was your boy. Just kind of
Little
going.
thing.
Yeah, and I mean, I went through that chapter and I was like, did we need that? And yes, it paints like this horrible picture and everything. I mean, and he's really good at that, but at the same time, like, did we really need that? Like, no,
No.
we will never see that character again, but we will see moments like that again. This is the beginning of what people call his kingisms, and it's one where he loves to diverge to side characters, and they feel really important to the story, but they're just kind of
They fizzle
breaks.
out.
I don't. There's
It's
theories on why.
just it's just free form of writing, you know. It's like he writes as he
It
goes.
really.
He's not planning it out. So like if he sees a character and it might be kind of interesting in like but maybe it falls off, you know, and he just I need to
And
move
and
on.
and Aaron is exactly right. He stated that he does that a lot. I mean, there's major characters that he had huge plans for, and then when he finally gets to the story and gets to writing, that character becomes one of our like Sheriff Avery characters, or he just doesn't know what to do with him anymore. The story changes or
Yeah.
progresses to something else. But it is, I mean, that moment for those of y'all that don't know what we're talking about, there's a moment when we get to see Rhea looking through the glass, and it's one of Rhea's favorite moments, supposedly, because she's getting to see the best corner cleaning maid within this kingdom, and we find out why she's the best corner cleaning maid because she has this, what is it, this OCD click about licking corners to get them clean to the point where she's like pulling splinters out of her tongue and I was kind of hoping when I remember reading that scene for the first time that we were actually going to get her kids to come in and catch her or her husband, or I thought it was going to go full blown, like we were going to get like a whole scene after that. But I'm kind of glad he kind of like bird flew off. Like, all right.
I interpreted that scene as the coups being able to use the pink grapefruit to manipulate people to do her bidding, and she forced that chick to do that thing, or the pink grapefruit forced her to do it, and she was watching it happen. So it's like that grapefruit had influence over everybody's little bad decisions there, and that's how I interpreted that.
I
See,
like. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I took that as more of a cautionary tale of what happens, I think, when you're too focused on whatever part of the beam that you're on, that it takes you off whatever purpose you're supposed to be on, and you're now just hyper focused on one purpose. I'm going to expand on that when I talk about Roland and the Grapefruit.
So I'll just say that when I read this, cause a wheel kind of thing, and we also know that when actions are done against Ka, when you're not doing what you're supposed to do, the world kind of acts out. And in that, I want to say in that moment of the story, we're getting closer to the reaping kind of thing. And I want to say it's like that scene to me was just like how nuts the town was getting in a short span of time leading up to what the town did to Susan kind of thing. But I like that too. I mean, we don't have evidence either way, right? But
Not yet. Huh?
I mean, but we do know that Rhea does use magic. That she, it's kind of like give or say, right? Because do we actually see her having control of the grapefruit, or is it the opposite kind of thing? And why? For Costa readers, we do know some more details about the grapefruit, and I will state this: that we do know that someone has control of these things. That's what I will say, and they're using them. It's kind of like Lords of the Rings, and that it's a direct reference, right? And in Lords of the Rings, he was using the this the what were they called, the seer stones.
Yeah.
Just like they could look in the seer stones, the bad guys could look right back at them. So it's kind of it's the same thing. So some thought that goes into that. Why is this thing that's also looking to the thing showing Rhea the things it was choosing to show Rhea, or was it Rhea seeing what she wanted to see kind of thing? Maybe she just wanted to see some bad.
I think it was letting her up to a certain point see what she wanted to see, but as it was draining life from her, it seemed like she was losing control of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was taking more from her. That's what it does.
See, but it was interesting because as it's draining from her, I know that at one point, I think when they finally found Rhea, her hair, did they say her hair was pretty much all gone?
Mm-hmm. She looked like a
down to the scalp.
And when she was controlling Susanna, the first thing that she had her do, chop your hair off.
Yeah, she charmed her.
Yeah, so I don't know if the connection with the hair was just like, hey, I'm losing my hair, so I'm going to make you lose your hair too.
I don't think so. That was just a mean thing to do.
Yeah, I think it was just a mean thing to do because Rhea didn't start doing that until she became in possession of the grapefruit.
Yeah, it happened
and
after.
And that was part of her plan, like from the get-go when Susan came. Like she had that. The grapefruit was like an extra added benefit. But I want to say that was the whole hypnotizing thing that she did with Susan was like there from the beginning. And leading into that, it's something she references it twice. We never get an answer, but it's something that Mayor Thorne did to Rhea is why she was going to do that to Susan. It was like a retaliation, and we've seen Rhea in her grudges, right?
Mm-hmm. She gets slighted, and then she'll get revenge in a most horrible way. But that's what she does.
My thought was because it's a weird part of her name, right? Because she is a title, Rhea of the Coos, but we don't ever find out like what the Coos represents or play. I mean, it could be all kinds of things. Okay, right, or a place, or a school, or a family name. We don't know that part. Okay, so there's some weird things about her. When we meet Rhea, she's like skidded on the edge of town so far out that it was like, I think Susan said it was like 2 miles once she got to the edge of town. So like I always had this concept that like Mayor Thorne was using Rhea because it's mentioned throughout the town that they all go to her for either love potions or headache medicine, but like he kept her on the edge like as a blight kind of thing, and she resented that, and that was her like kind of payback for like the resentment. I don't know. Those are my thoughts. We don't ever get like an official answer on that part.
I was getting all the references, of course, the Wicked Witch of the West, but like also like Hansel and Gretel type.
Okay, then and kind of mentioned this before, but we have a lot of literary, like, references, music, movies, but literally towards the end of the book, I mean, it's like two different books that we literally are kind of in, right? I mean, you could say Wizard of Oz and The Stand for those unacquainted, from where we were at that time. Okay, so my next question is, and we're going to get into the sad part of the book, because we don't just have one sad part of this book, we have multiple sad parts of the ending. But the first part is something that's heavily referenced all the way up until this book. It's the burning of Susan, the Chayu. I mean, so the burning of Susan is part of the bad that Roland wants to tell the quartet. Why is this decision on his part morally bad and is seen as morally bad? Why is this so important that he needs to tell the group? And do you see it as his decision? Because he does make a choice. Was it morally bad? Was it so bad that, to stop the whole journey, blah, blah, blah? I'm going to go with you, Trev, new reader. What's up, family?
I mean, he feels responsible. The only reason she's dead is because of Rhea. And he kind of set that in motion. Rhea getting revenge.
But technically, Susan did that to herself, right? All the way back in the beginning with Rhea. It was her interaction with Rhea, her specifically not doing what she was told because she was told to be there at a specific time, and due to Ka, she felt this weird wind and decided to run to the hut. She got there early. During the conversation, she twice referenced Rhea as a witch kind of thing. So I mean, I wouldn't really count that part as well. I mean, yes, Roland does get her involved and blah blah blah. I mean, he has to make, but I mean, you could honestly say a lot of Susan's actions are her own. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, but they wouldn't have found Susan if it wasn't for her. I mean, Rhea, I don't think would have left her hut if it wasn't for them killing her snake. I think that just drove her
But
mad.
that is true. That is true. And then the reason they go to Rhea is because of Susan. Yeah, that's true. Phil, what you got?
I'm going to go into it later, but I'm going to say I don't think Roland's actions are of his own will, whether he realizes it or not. I think at this point in the story, another force is pulling the wool over his eyes. But I'm going to go into that later on.
All right. Aaron, let's go with you next.
So what's the question now?
The burning of Susan is part of the bad that Roland wants to tell the quartet. The reason he stopped, and he's telling the story. Why
is he
bad? Why is he telling the story, and why does he see it as a morally bad decision? He states a couple times before he tells the story that
he tells it. Because then they won't,
and for reference, he does not technically kill Susan. It's not like he drops her from a chasm like he did Jake. In the end, you could say it's their actions that led Susan, to her demise. But I mean, technically, there's only one time where he does make a choice, and that's where he learns through the grapefruit about the tower. That this is officially the moment when his journey starts for the tower. And the grapefruit gave him an option. It gave him a choice.
The tower over stuff.
Yes, and at the time of the story, and this might be confusing to the new readers, but at this time of the story, when he made the choice, he did not know Susan was pregnant. He is learning that as he's telling the story. There's no way possible he could have known because Susan never tells him. There's a lot of the story that he doesn't learn until he sits down and tells the quartet. That's kind of like the magic of the story, right? And he references it 3 times, like during the times that he stops and talks to the group. Eddie references it twice about the eating thing, and Okay, so um, I don't know, Steve. What you got, Dad? Or Aaron?
That's all.
He feels massively guilty. He had a choice there. See, there was Ka again, like a win. He could have went with Susan, moved off, and had the baby and lived his life and been whatever he wanted to be there. But he made the decision not to do that, and he pays for it hard. And now he feels bad about it. He's got guilt. But
Oh,
then, yeah, the pink grapefruit showing him the tower and said, "All right, so here you go." But we can't talk about that part next because it's going to lead up to too many spoilers. So I'm going to leave it there.
So the reflection, like, let's let me paint a picture. So we got the group, and we're sitting there, and he tells this story about his past, and we know everything now about the story, right? So like the story's done, and you're sitting there, and like, why would he tell this story? Like, I mean, he I could understand if he was telling the gunslinger story, right? He literally killed Jake. He made that decision, let Jake drop, and he continued on with the tower. This is a little different though. I mean, he didn't make that. It's not like, while Susan was being captured, while Susan was burning, he was seeing multiple different things, and he thought Susan was safe. He states it twice. Like if he thought she was in danger, he would have turned around. Even though through the grapefruit, he does choose the tower over Susan, but it's also because he believes the tower is the ultimate all, and it's dying, and someone needs to save it, kind of thing. So like in the end, his decision to like go after the tower and like set aside Susan, his love, like it's not really morally bad, gray, or anything. It's actually like the ultimate good, right? He finds out that the universe is dying, the universe is called upon him, and like it's like, hey, keep being a teenager and fall in love and blah blah blah, but I mean, of course, he makes that decision to go to the tower. So at the end of the story, what's kind of the moral point of it? What's the
He,
reason?
well, he didn't know that she's like as he's watching her die. He didn't know she's going to die whenever he makes the decision.
No, he didn't.
He just chooses the tower over her, and he's telling his new quartet this because he's giving them a choice, like almost a
Elaborate.
choice
Yes.
that his old quartet didn't really have.
And how does it? Okay, so go back to the roof. You getting it, Trey? I love, man. You guys tonight. All right. So, what's the reflection from the past to the present related to what you just said? What's the difference? You just said it.
He's giving them a choice
Right.
to go to the tower or go home at this point after
But
hearing about.
why dread the choice? That's wrong. You're right there. Come on.
I don't know.
I mean, okay, so you're the leader and you're trying to like convince your group on you're not so good a leader, right? And you tell the story to reflect. And you're right. It's the difference is his earlier quartet did not give the joke. We actually find out by the end of the story that there's a lot wrong on what they were told, because it's ultimately in the beginning told that they were sent to Magus to hide out during the war, right, with the good man. But in the end, we find out that Stephen Deshane knew a lot more about what was going on in Mages, the big Ka part, because he knew the grapefruit was there. He knew specifically. He warned Roland and called it by name, the pink one. And then even went into detail about how Stephen knew and had some of the other grapefruit. Like he knew where a couple of the other pieces were, and specifically stated that they had a couple of the other pieces of the, you know. So why the choice?
I think it's basically kind of like I said at the beginning. If I were one of these other characters right now, if I were Eddie, the question in the back of my head, and this is what kind of Eddie's been leaning towards the whole time. He kept saying, hey, you're gonna sell me out for the tower. You're gonna sell me out for the tower. I would be questioning at any moment, hey, am I going to be left to burn, so to speak? Am I going to be
Exactly.
the next sacrifice? And I don't even think that's a question that Roland has an answer to.
Ooh.
And Roland's given them the choice, though. He wants to give them all the choice of whether they want to go for the tower or not, despite knowing that they could very well die doing it. But they're going to go willingly, or they're not.
And at the end of the
They
story,
have to form. They have to be cohesive. They have to be
Exactly.
one with another. Like
Single goal,
like
single
cohesive
thought.
yes. And at the end of the story, we actually get the moment when they have to choose, right? Because with Randall, he actually asked them to deny their journey to the tower, and all of them, including Oi, actually no. They don't even care about anything else other than just returning to the beam at this point. So I mean, that like you're all you are in this whole is exactly right. You know, you're talking about the cohesion of the quartet is so important, and that's the importance of the story. It has nothing to do with really the love, the passion, like has failed. No, it's the like this is what I'm capable of doing. You know some of the bad stuff that I'm doing. Like, do you still want to take this journey to this thing that we're not even sure like exists, kind of thing, you know? And I need to know, like, beyond a doubt, kind of thing, you know. So it's and cause a wheel, right? Like I said, they didn't get these choices in the past, and we kind of know some of the things that happened to those people in the past, right? All of them are dead.
And it almost seems like Ka is cruel that way, but it's also doing him a favor. It's getting rid of his distractions out of his way completely. You can have regret over it, but if he knew Susan was still alive out there somewhere, he'd be distracted. So she needs to be eliminated. Any distractions to keep him from the tower need to be eliminated.
How many people get second chances in this regard? You know, usually you don't. We don't have like, you know, a one up or a continue button, or you know, if you f up for real in life, you usually
That's
did.
it.
See, let me ask you though. You just gave me a thought.
Mm.
The only character that we know has died and then come back has been Jake. When Jake died, he didn't come back as another character. He came back as Jake.
Mm-hmm.
So, that being said, if all of these characters are dying, are they coming back as themselves, but maybe going under different names? You know, first I was thinking maybe they're being reborn as different members of the con. That's what I kind of felt like we were talking about at the beginning. But now it's got me thinking, no, maybe this quartet who has passed is kind of holding a grudge against Roland. Maybe we're going to see them pop up later. Maybe we have seen them pop up already as some sort of antagonizing force.
I love the thinking and thought, and to relate back to what you keep relating to, but the comic side of it, right? We do permadeath isn't a thing, and we kind of seen that in this book with there are other worlds in this, because you're right. We've seen Jake die twice now, but he didn't really die, right? We saw like different incantations of him or reincarnated states. You know, maybe like Jake really did die, and maybe like Ka needs Jake for some reason, so Ka reinstated him. I mean,
Multiverse. It's just another Jake from another universe. That's all. He really died, so it's just a different Jake.
Even the TikTok man.
Wait, say it again.
It's the same Jake, damn it. He saved Jake. He saved the same one.
All right. Let's move along.
Jake's dead. No, he's alive. No, he's dead. He's alive.
I got better.
Poor Jake.
So, and this one's kind of left up to the reader's interpretation, but at this far, you know, we are following our supposed hero in a story, right? On a journey, and we know it's a kind of a holy crusade, right? He is trying to save the known everything, right? As far as he knows, and we know at this point. My question is, if this is all calm destiny, right? Why does Roland need to suffer in all these ways to get him to do what he needs to do? You're talking about so far on the story, and and just in the past story, you're talking about like three major moments of suffering that most people would be able to like count back from. You know what I'm saying? I mean, losing your love, or an unborn child, or you're not your best friends, but like friends that you were in the same crib with since birth. You know, I mean, and that's just in this prequel story. We're not even talking about Toll and him having to decimate a whole town. Or why is suffering such a huge part of the story? Let's go with Trev first.
I almost look at it as he has a lot more power than he even thinks he has, and maybe a purpose that he doesn't think he has or know he has. And it started out in the gunslinger. The gunslinger was almost like he was lost. He was almost like an addict. And the man in black was almost helping him along the journey, along the path into the second book and into his getting his quartet again and just learning all these lessons because he has to know these lessons almost to be a better being for what is to come.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Let's go to Aaron. What you got, Aaron?
All right, can you say the question one more time?
At this point, if this is all call and it is destiny, right? Why does Roland need to suffer in so many ways up until this point?
Hmm. To get stronger?
And I was about to retell because, of course, there's a thing known as the hero's journey, right? In stories, and the hero's journey in most action, is kind of the basis of the story. It happens within all anime, games, but usually you got this hero, right? And he's got to get stronger, and you got to have this thing to get him stronger, and that's well, this is a little different, right? Because in the hero's journey, it's usually like a bad guy that the guy's got to prevail. He's got to increase his power level, or in this situation, I mean, it's like moment after moment of our writer just dragging this dude through the dirt, and the only times of real happiness we have is with our quartet, right? Why does he have to? I mean, the trials and tribulation. I mean, if you've ever read King Arthur, I'll relate to that because this relates a lot to King Arthur, right? If you've ever read those stories, there's only a couple times in the story where they might suffer, kind of thing. I mean, by this time, this is probably number 19th. I don't know. I haven't counted the suffering, but I mean, already, our dude's been through some stuff. Like, why?
He needs hope. Like, well, to know he needs
Ooh.
a team, to know he needs this quartet.
Hey, what was that first thing you said? Because he
Like,
needs what?
to have someone to have his back.
I like that.
I like that too.
Steve, what you got? You got?
Oh yeah. Well, I don't want to spoil it. Something
Dun, dun.
happened in the past that he didn't do. He was supposed to, and I'm not going to say what it is, but Cobb's not happy with what free choice. You're supposed to. He was supposed to do a certain thing, and he didn't do it. And yeah, he's being taught a lesson. It's like, you've been a naughty boy, so we're going to teach you a lesson. Maybe you'll get it the next round. Maybe you won't. I don't know.
So this is kind of like a purgatory type of thing for him.
And I do. Well, that would be a little different, right? Because in purgatory, you don't have free choice. And I love that Steve just brought that up, right? Because we have seen a lot of evidence of free choice, right? Even the Ka, destiny, luck, it has been named in this book, but we
And it
still
works for
see
both
free
sides
choice.
too. It's not just on the
Yeah.
good side; it's the bad side. It's all decisions that you make. Because Cod doesn't give a shit, good or evil, doesn't matter to it. If you make the wrong decision, boy, oh boy, Mother Nature is a bitch. She's a serial killer. She'll take you out.
Cheney says it seems like it's because the beam collapsing and the tower falling, the whole world is suffering. Oh, I
Yeah,
agree with that
that's a good one.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep, because being corrupted. Why?
And we see, and it's not just like things with emotions either, because time is suffering. Everything but gravity, it seems, or we know. We did not touch base. I think I did. I think Steve was.
Phil?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of truth to be said with what you were saying about the hero's journey.
What's up, Chuck?
It's important that the hero loses in order to inspire, generally speaking. I think there's also a practical point to this. As we've been told, Roland is a lot older than we perceive him to be, at least at first. Naturally, the older you are, the more loss you're going to see.
Oh, I like that.
I do think that there is a bit of work where when he veers off the path he's supposed to be on, it's a form of punishment. And it sounds like he veers more often, at least at this point, than he should. And maybe that's why it's so important, going back to your earlier question, why he questions his team and saying, are you sure you want to do this? Because at that point, it's not so much as, hey, I'm giving you the option. It's, hey, Ka, just so you know, if I mess up, it's not entirely my fault.
Hey. I mean, yeah, and both you and Trev, both brought it up, because in the Gunslinger, Trev had mentioned that we kind of touch base with Roland, and he kind of seems like he's not really. I mean, we learned 12 years he's been following, this man in black, and I mean, 12 years, like, what you been doing in 12 years? You just been walking behind this dude, like.
And I think he knows that
Trev,
this journey is a long one, just because he doesn't care if he's going to sit next to a campfire and think for months and years at all. So time is irrelevant to him.
Like the whole story, it's never referenced exactly how much time they spend, but it's months. It's months that pass within the time frame of this book. And just a short story, because I mean, even if you told the story word verbatim, it wouldn't be no months. I mean, we read the book and it's like a 40-hour audio book. It's like it could be done in it. No, but I mean, you all bring up valid points. Especially with the free choice. With Trev, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, they reference how the Dark Tower is getting further and further away from them constantly. I was thinking, is it Ka that's maybe doing all this to Roland to prepare him for the Dark Tower? Like he has to go through all this to get to the Dark Tower. It's not so much a length of distance, but a journey of the soul.
Nice.
I like that. Yeah, me too. There is some food for thought though, because we started off this journey on the beam, right? From the third book to this book, they were on the beam, right? And we were told the plane was going to continue on the path. And then we get to this part in the story, and Roland sits down and tells the story of his past, and we learn we're not on the beam anymore. And incidentally, by the end of the story, after a like Wizard of Ozzy type of situation, clicking their heels, and by the end of the story, they are on the back on the path of the beam. Any thoughts to that? Like if the story, and just some more added thought, but if the story was meant to be and had to, because we know that Ka demanded this story at the end of the story. Ka literally gets mad at Roland for not finishing the story and demands the end. And so if Ka wanted this story, why did it deviate him from the path? Let's go, Trev.
It didn't deviate him. They Blaine was the one. It was kind of like negative call. It pushed them off the beam, and they had to go through that trial, and then they almost had to like reaffirm their quartet to find the beam again.
I love it. The red. Maybe that was the Reds call, pulling in that other direction, and Blaine, he was a pain, and he was the evil SOB, right? So maybe he wasn't so truthful about them, being on the path of the beam. Maybe that was intentional all along. Yeah. I love it. Let's go. Let's mix it. Let's go, Aaron. Aaron, what you got?
Just I guess so. Like why they think they're back on track now?
And what was the whole like? If Cobb wanted the story and took him off the path of the beam, what are your thoughts on why it took them off the path? Or is it exactly like Trev says? Because Trev puts up a very valid point about Blaine. I mean that could be
Just
the finality to the answer.
just a lesson to stay focused, I guess. That they shouldn't get that they need to.
Don't get sidetracked, but get sidetracked. No, I'm playing.
Yeah, I guess.
All right. Hey,
Yeah,
it's tough, and it could be exactly what Trev said. Maybe it's Red's car, and I mean, some of these questions I don't necessarily have a definite answer. Let's see what Steve has to say. Then,
Sometimes, well, there's free choice, right? They got free choice, but I'm almost thinking that when Blaine was taking them through the wastelands and stuff, he hadn't done that run to Topeka and who knows how long, maybe centuries or whatever, and everything was breaking down and things were bending and moving, and maybe at one point it was on the path of the beam, but that's the knowledge that he had, but now that he took the run, maybe it deviated itself. But that could be Walter messing around with that too, because I mean they find that the palace in the middle of Topeka, and they end up
hey,
in
there we go.
Kansas. We go through a thinny, and there's some manipulation going on there. But
And
Crimson King has his plans, right? And he's telling Walter what to do, and Walter's got to execute it and make sure that Roland's going in the right way and doing the right things here. But then Walter has his own plans too, and he's defying the Crimson King and messing around with shit that he shouldn't be. But then Ka says, "All right, screw you guys all. I'm gonna make sure everything goes right back onto the path again." But it's funny how even if you veer off from the path, you'll always find your way back to it. There's those what I've called before the nexus points, where fate will intervene and draw you back onto the path of the beam, whether you want to or not, and then put you back on the path, and then everything goes smoothly again until you're like a dog with a frisbee and you see some shit off to the side and you go off again, and then it'll correct you. It's like mother trying to correct you, put you back on the beam again.
Love it. And we do learn at multiple points and context clues that the Man in Black did have some play with Blaine, the whole town of Blood, and a lot of the past, right? Because I mean, he's there with Jonas and gives him that little bit of information, and their whole like nexus point, let's just say, of the journey is at the Emerald Palace. That is kind of just out of place there. Some of us know exactly what it is, but then it's a different story. Phil, you got anything you want to add?
I have a couple questions. Tell me if I'm wrong. At one point in the story, did Walter say that whoever he's working for is in the tower or has an office in the tower? Or on the floor of the tower, I should say, not an office.
Yes. Not an office, but that he's in the tower. And okay, it's not just said by Walter, it's said by Roland. And the way Roland references it is the way when he's talking to the grapefruit and he says, when I make it to the tower, I'll make it to the tower and I'll conquer the evil that's at the top. And that's the line that he specifically says. So at this point, we know that the ultimate evil or whatever is, and we're just going to say the Crimson King. But at this point, it is referenced that he's in the tower.
Well, I was going to say, is that the Crimson King or no?
The tower?
Is it reference that Walter's boss who's in the tower is the Crimson King, or is it somebody else?
I'm going to say
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna say yes. It is like through context clues. It is referenced that the Crimson King is in the tower at this point. We don't know why, what, when, none of that. But that it is referenced twice by Walter and Roland.
See, because I'm starting to think, we've been talking a lot about the beams and the different colors and whatnot. I'm starting to think that I don't know if you have a quote unquote boss for each color, and maybe they're already at the tower, just kind of waiting for whomever their team or their avatar is to reach the tower. Because look, we've seen a lot of involvement with the red in this chapter. I don't know, other than what you've been saying, I don't know that Walter specifically is working for the red. I almost feel like he's working for something else that we don't know yet. But in terms of Blaine, I don't know that. I think Blaine was trying to lead him off a path. Whether he was working for somebody directly or not, that I don't know. I was kind of almost going with the point that we have met a handful of characters who are seemingly immortal or seemingly a lot older than we see, or who don't resurrect, like Roland, like Walter from what we've seen. I thought at one point maybe Blaine was one of these people who was reborn, like people from the past who was reborn as this Crane, which
That's a good concept.
I mean, kind of seeing what the Crimson King did with the TikTok man, that was kind of my thought with that. But now I'm not so sure. Either way, I think the name of the game, it's almost like a big race. And you have these different quartets and these different forces all trying to reach the tower. And the other sides, just as any kind of race, are trying to throw off the other beams, trying to throw off the other teams and whatnot. I can't say for sure yet why that's the case. I will say this, though. I wish Namman was here, and I hope that he sees us and puts some input in, even if it's just within our group, because I feel like the whole thing that we were starting with, the original question with why does the Ka need Roland to come clean? I kind of saw a lot of parallels between that and going to confession. Look, the path to God, as we're taught, you have to confess your sins and then you're forgiven for them. I think it has something a little bit to do with that, whether it's for Roland to come clean or, again, just as an advisory to, hey, guys, just so you know, we're all cool now, but I may not care if you live or die before we get to the end.
Yeah. No, well, you're actually right about the confessional. That's exactly what it is. And to the point where we get that at the end because Roland stops the story. They move along in present day and they make it to the Emerald Palace. And it gets to the point where Ka demands that he finishes the last of the story. And that's when we learn about the matricide part with Rhea. And so it is, and we've seen that before, right? And he's actually referenced, and Roland actually remembers Brown this time because we learned that Brown is actually in the past with Magus as well, and that's exactly what he did with Brown. Remember, I mean, he kept wanting Brown to ask him about Toll, and Brown never would, and eventually Roland just outright told him because it was like this, release of guilt kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right there. I do like the theory, which I mean, at this point, yes, but so I do like that okay, we're on a set beam, and maybe there's other groups trying to make it on other beams, like and something that I've kind of casually thought about, like maybe we're seeing one group and there could be more groups because putting all your eggs in a basket isn't like the smartest of ideas, especially from this all like powerful white or Ka or whatever. So I find it really weird that they're like, yep, we got this one hero and he's going to be the one to do it,
Neo.
right, Neil. So I do like that. I mean, and I like the concept of that a guardian could possibly like be journeying to the tower to do something. Like, we know the Guardians like protect, but we also know there's negative Guardians, like the opposite to the good Guardian. We have the turtle and we have the spider. What is the bad one doing? I mean, you can't say, I wouldn't believe the bad. Well, maybe the bad one is people are territorial, things are
Mhm.
territorial. But I do like the concept that, like, what happens if the bad element makes it to the tower, and I do like that concept, though. It's interesting.
Are
Does it?
are the bad and the good like opposite on
They
like the
are on
same parallel
on.
beam?
They are.
So maybe like
It's
one of them is
they're
they're keeping each other from getting to the beam by holding the beam, you
the
know?
yin and yang.
Yeah.
Hmm. I don't know. Food for the that was pretty good, Phil. Anybody else got anything they want to add into the before
You
I
know,
move along?
you were talking about Merlin a little bit earlier.
Hmm.
I hadn't read a whole lot of Arthurian legend. If I have, it's been a really long time. But I just did a quick Google search too, and it says this just kind of pops out. In terms of this discussion, according to Stephen Thomas Knight, I don't know who he is. Merlin embodies a conflict between knowledge and power, beginning as a symbol of wisdom in the first Welsh. Okay, so we're talking about a conflict between knowledge and power. In these terms, is it that Ka will not allow Roland to reach where he has to or be as powerful as he needs to be unless he gives this knowledge that, hey, just so you know, this is how everything went down. Unless he's being truthful, I guess you could say.
Could be, and that could be the ultimate reflection of why we have the focus on Merlin's grapefruit. Why the title of the book is Wizard and Glass, right? Um, Something I've kind of never thought about, but the knowledge and power. But it does play a major key on multiple levels because you're talking about Farson, the good man, and the whole like gunslinger rebellion thing, and that's exactly what that is knowledge and power within that. Because Farson trying to spread a diplomacy type of life, and that's really the ability to vote for who's in is all he's spreading. It doesn't sound so evil in the main scheme of things until you learn how he's spreading the diplomacy. He's
Mm-hmm.
killing kids, but technically that's what it bounds down to. I mean, technically you could say the Crimson King side of it would be after both knowledge and power, kind of thing. I always kind of saw the Crimson King and related to something else, but Zelda and Ganon and his, the you think, you know, evil wouldn't necessarily want knowledge or want, some of those things that we consider noble, but what it can do with those things, like, is the dangerous opposition. I don't know. All
See,
right, so
I'm not sold that the Crimson King is that end level boss for the Red. And the only reason I say that is because if that were the case and Walter is working for the Crimson King, who is Roland working for?
at this moment, he has stated the white, and he physically states it in this book that he is of the white, and that's what the ultimate good in this book is. Okay, so you do bring up something valid, though. It is conceived that Walter, um, Randall Flagg, Crimson King are evil, or that the red is like a. It has not been stated so, and with the Crimson King, we haven't seen any of his actions. Um, with Walter, I mean, it's a give and take on how you want to represent his actions. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
physically, has he done like ultimate evil? I mean, not really. He's resurrected a guy. He told a secret to a girl. Like, I mean, technically, he like blessed her beyond blessings because
Mm-hmm.
what he did to Allie was he showed her the known everything, and that's what made her go crazy. Um, but
But like, who is the
tech,
White's version of the Crimson King? That we haven't. seen yet, if there is one, I guess.
Roland, if any.
There is. I'm gonna say yes, and I can't remember if we
Arthur
got.
Eld.
No. There is a like well, yeah, you could say Arthur O, but there is a spiritual like element that is the white. I
Well,
don't
if you
know
want to
if we
go that
got.
far, then the Crimson King is just a representative of the evil side of whatever the red is, right? And then you have the white. So Arthur Eld is his, avatar, I guess. You can say the avatar.
Mhm. Oh, that's actually the best way to put it. Is like
They
that's
work
just
through
the
those people.
that's just the red's avatar would say, and the white has Roland would be the avatar of the white. I like that. Um, but technically at this time we don't know.
Yeah.
We haven't been. Especially with the Crimson King, that they haven't divulged any information besides that Walter, he does say that he works with him. We've seen his symbol around, and his symbol is usually tied with bad people. I'll go that far, but even then, it's the book's like perceivement of these people. It's what the book is telling us. Hey, these are bad guys or whatever. But we don't physically see him do a whole lot of bad. I mean, I think the kids with their weird stuff with the dog, that's some bad stuff right there.
Yeah.
Um, um, all right, so we get to the very last chapter of the book, and this is all God's chillin', got shoes, and this is where we have finally completed the story. We're back on the yellow brick road leading to the Emerald Palace, literally in the Wizard of Oz, to the point where they even get Ruby's shoes. But coming to the end of this epileptic long love story, we see our current quartet return to the highway and come to Emerald Palace with ruby slippers straight from the Wizard of Oz for each member, meeting the bum hug wizard, quickly killing the TikTok man, and re-meeting Randall Flagg, gaining the grapefruit one last time. The quartet literally relives Roland's matricide moment, and Rhea has the last laugh over a snake. Mysteriously waking up outside of Kansas, we move along back to the side of the beam. We get to the last couple questions, but the first one is at the end, we finally learn the matricide part that Roland has been describing since day one. What factor was at play and why with this whole story, and why was it needed with letting the content know? I'm going to go Phil, you right there.
I need to reserve my answer until a little bit later on when I tell you about my theory, which may or may not be right. I'll say this though: this whole scene, I was surprised how it was done. I thought it was going to be something much more dramatic, and at least, Trev, tell me if I'm wrong. In the audiobook, it was almost like you were building this crescendo, but then it was just kind of like a quieter moment than I expected.
I'll agree.
I'm a little. I was a little pissed that this is not being adapted into a television series or a film series or something, because I feel like this was one of those Game of Thrones moments.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
And it's hopefully it's coming. Hopefully Flanagan's. But this is one of the debatable things about the TV show and the movies. Is this the starting point of the story? With Magus or whatever, or do they start at the Gunslinger? My boy Aaron will tell you this is where they need to start, is Wizard and Glass with the prequel. All right, so let's go, Aaron.
Sorry, so where are we now? Question.
At the end, we finally learn about the matricide part with Roland and his mom. What factors was at play and why?
Oh, I don't know.
You could state the easy one,
I don't know.
I'll give the easy one. We know the intent behind Walter slash was to get him to take his manhood early, which he was hoping he'd fail, right? But all this is Ka, right? And then we get to the part where we learn that like Roland is basically tricked into killing his mom, but we also learned that he wasn't tricked, that he kind of knew that it was his mom all along. And it was kind of like the disdain from that moment with Martin, that because we've seen that twice already, right? Okay, and this goes back to it's so casually like read over, right? But I'm going to take you back to the first time that Susan was at this, like, at that gala with Mara Thorne. And it was the first time Roland met Susan in public. And he learned from Olin Thorne that, you know, Susan was basically the mayor's gilly. And his first thought in his head after learning that was he wanted to literally kill Susan. He wanted to take his revolver out and shoot her dead. Um, so that kind of goes back into the mom thing, like why like it was so easy for him to like go to that decision things, and it plays into the like he doesn't see around corners and blah blah blah. But like, so back to the question, what are what were the real factors at play? Why, if this is all Ka and destiny, why did this have to happen?
Because uh, if it was
Every
allowed to continue, it would have been worse for
Well,
Roland
think about the
because
ramifications. I'll lead into this. Think of the ramifications if Roland hadn't done what he had done. We knew that there was a plan set up before this with Farson. What would have done? What would have happened if this had not happened?
What was Roland's mom going to
right.
do? What was she going to do? What was she told to do?
Oh, to help Farson.
Do what specifically? She was given something. You
The pink
remember?
grapefruit.
No,
Or no.
A dagger,
she had a dagger.
Oh, the dagger.
a
She had
special
killed.
dagger, and she was
Yeah.
supposed to kill Stephen.
Yeah.
So if Roland wouldn't have done what he had done, and
Her
we
father
kind of
would have killed.
yeah, it would have been the fall of Gilead at that moment. Like
Yeah. She
Farson
would
would
have
have
killed
won, and
Stephen.
we learned that Gilead does fall, but it stands for a lot longer after that. Like it doesn't fall instantly after this moment. So not only did Roland's actions like halt Farson's war movement through his work in mages because he destroyed all his tankers and oil, and he got rid of most of the horses, which just stated that he could replace those. But we do learn that Farson does not make it to Gilead because of those actions, but also that Farson failed at conquering the capital as well, and Roland's actions again. But both stories are seen as like horrible, suffering, like things that he needs to tell the present group. But in all realistically sense, he kind of saves the day in both regards, right? I mean, the saying, the one outweighs the many, um, kind of what he did, right? I mean, like through his actions, he ends up halting like a major war thing that you're talking about. Like if it would have proceeded, it could have killed like the rest of the known midworld or whatever. We don't know. Um,
That's funny how Rhea the Coos was trying to get her revenge on Roland, and at the same time, she inadvertently caused him to save the kingdom for X number of years.
right.
He had no idea she was doing that at the time. She thought, "Yeah, I'm going to get you to kill your mom."
I like that the quartet and the present quartet reflects on that and kind of states that in the story, and kind of is like, well, what happened to her? And Ron like, nah, I don't want to talk about that bitch anymore. like, like at that part of the story, Ron was just like, nope, I told you what I told you. That's all you're getting. Like, all right, so
It's
my
kind of interesting
next,
that he's sacrificing somebody to achieve an objective twice in this book. It kind of mirrored the whole Jake situation.
Yeah, it
did
seems
he
like
sacrifice him?
I mean, Susan, he picked the tower over Susan, and she ended up dying. And then he prolonged the war, but his mom ended up dying.
Yeah.
So it was not really sacrifice, but
I wouldn't say either one is a sacrifice because,
but
like,
Mm.
not really sacrifice isn't the right word.
I know
It's
what you mean, though. Like,
it's almost like negative call. Like
yeah,
it
like
it takes
his
something and
actions.
rewards something.
I think that's exactly what it is, and that's what the book's trying to show us, because I mean, ultimately, you can look at his decisions and be like, oh yeah, he chose to kill Susan. No, I mean, the tower gave him a choice, but the tower wasn't like, well, you need to kill her right now. It was just like, nah, you can keep loving her, or you could continue the quest of the tower, kind of thing, and then due to the actions that were involved in the world at that time, that I mean, Susan was just wrong place, wrong time, kind of thing. Um, I mean, with Jake, that's a whole different story. I mean, yeah, Walter gave him the choice, and then Roland was like, "Well,
Mhm.
I mean, they
yeah, I
were
mean
all
that,
choices by him, though. Every
yeah, they are,
single
they are."
one had a choice by him that he had to make.
Well, I mean, with his mother and stuff specifically, I mean, and it's even stated by the group, did he know? He knew it wasn't like the snake, that it was a belt, I mean, because some things of the story that he's being filled in, and some things he does know, and that part he does know, even though he believes that, I mean, the way he phrases it, it's seen as like this insufferable thing, right? Matricide, the killing of a parent, kind of, or your mother specifically. But like, I mean, if he wouldn't have killed her, like, and he would have walked in the room, what would she have done? She would have like hugged him, and nah, she would have tried to kill him and gone out. I mean, um, no, but I think that's a big motif of the book, is trying to show you that through Roland's actions, and it's been there since the Gunslinger, right? Like back to the wandering, doofus, and trying to get him back on the right track. Um, I want to say similar thing. They're just, maybe the book's showing us what happens through different types of actions, not necessarily in forward or backward directions, but what happens if Roland loves, or what happens if Roland chooses family, or what happens if Roland becomes a farmer, those kind of things, Stop 23. Hey, Robin. All right. So, anybody else want to add any of that before I go? I got like a couple more. All right, so we see the sigil of the Crimson King a lot towards the end of the tale. How and why are they connected to Hambry, Topeka, and the Green Palace? Why? And I'm gonna go with Steve this time.
I don't know. The Crimson King. He loves his castles, eh? Got those banners flying, got that eyeball on there. You got the slogans all over the place. All hail the Crimson King.
What's up, Rich?
Seems like they're all connected to castles. He loves these castles.
He does. That's the whole medieval,
Yeah,
motif.
the
I
whole
like.
medieval
Mhm.
thing. They use it through the whole thing.
No thoughts on why these specific places are tied?
The tower.
The town.
It's always the tower and the paths of the beams. No, actually, I
This
can't
one
think
I'll
of
leave
it.
open ended because this one's a
Yeah.
little. Anybody have any thought on this one? Why? And specifically, like, because we've seen the sigil before this. We saw it in New York, and it's starting to pop up a little bit more. But at the end of the day, we see a lot. Like, I mean, they go to two buildings specifically that's decorated with it. It's on Rhea's cart. It's on, yeah, I mean, specifically like all around the Green Palace.
I guess because maybe there's just more influence there.
They're getting closer to the tower.
That place
Hey,
belongs to them. There you go.
what, Trev?
They're
Close.
getting closer to the tower. More
Oof.
occurrences. There's going to be more of an impact, more of an influence.
And Phil, what was that thing about, like, somebody being in the tower?
Yeah, but as far as the sigil popping up and all these indicators of the Crimson King, I don't know if it's more that, hey, he's occupied the tower. That's kind of why you see more of that. I'm starting to think it's basically just kind of more of a sign that maybe Roland has deviated from his beam and has somehow gotten to the red beam.
I'm gonna, because where I'm going with this, but back to the reflection, right? And you're kind of almost there, but like maybe at one part in the story, we had this part where like Roland and his quartet, his younger quartet, were like they had to cross enemy lines,
Mm-hmm.
and incidentally, we're at like the halfway part in the story, and maybe we just crossed over into enemy lines. I mean, like we Trev, we just, it's for the tower and filled. Somebody's at the tower. So yeah.
I didn't think
That's what
about the series, about being the midpoint of the series, and that kind of being a line that we cross. That's cool.
So as a reflection going forward, we're in enemy territory here. A lot of what we've seen, and in the story, we've seen passing moments when we're greeted with kindness and resources, and this is kind of that point where King is kind of like letting us know, like, hey, if you thought any of this was dark at this point, no, we're crossing Mordor's gates, kind of, right when we're not exactly at the mountain yet, but we're crossing Mordor's gates is what we're doing. And incidentally, right, we come to a tower that has a massive gate. Another Lords of the all right, so let's see. Any thoughts on why Ka demands this story from Roland? And besides, I think kind of what we already stated, right? I'll let this be free, open-ended. And Trev, I can see my sticker even with the lights on. I mean, because we do learn that this is something that Ka demands. It's not, I mean, at this point in the story, it's told both that Roland wants to tell the quartet and that Ka at this point is demanding it. At the point where Roland has finished the story, like I mentioned, and Ka's demand that he finishes the story and tells him the important part. Like, why is Ka demanding Roland to do this? Go ahead, Eric.
Funny.
It's so that they can go, because they need to make, the rest of the quartet needs to make their decision too. Well, and I mean, so Ka's saying, it isn't just Roland. Roland doesn't get to make the choice alone. The quartet has to hear it all.
All right. What you got,
There's
Phil?
that nexus point again, right? So free
Steve.
choice is taken away at a nexus point to get you back on the path of the beam. That's where Ka comes in. It'll always take away all free choices and say, you have to do this because you're getting back to your nexus point. And then you're on the path. And then if you veer off again, it'll do it to you again. It'll take away your free choice and bring you back into the light.
I like it.
I agree that part of it is, hey, you have to tell the rest of the quartet what's going to be, what might happen. But I also think Ka, at the same time, in the spirit of confession, is demanding that Roland reflect on this as well. Like maybe it's a way of basically keeping him in check.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Thanks.
Hey, Joe.
I like that. Trev?
I think it has to do with kind of Phil's first point about the quartet being one. Like, Roland, he's been in Eddie's mind. He knows everything about Eddie. He knows everything about Susan. So it's more, I think it's more along the lines of Kef to have that bond and have that mental bond, you have to just come clean. That on top of the fact that he's starting a new quartet, so he has to pass that old quartet in the past and just get it off his mind and kind of just leave it in the past to form this new group.
And we do see what happens in the past when he's not so forthcoming with his quartet, right? I mean, instantly, he thought he was in the green, and we see instantly that his quartet knew that something was off, like even before they knew about Susan. You know, I mean, to the point where like it was that they were both getting scared, angry, and worried, you know, because Roland was almost like a different person kind of thing. And we're talking about in a world that has demons and um, all different kind of possibility. And at this point, we werewolves and vampire. I mean, all kind of stuff. Um, no, but and I'm glad that you mentioned Kef the first time that it's been mentioned tonight. An element that is active in this story. So maybe it wasn't Ka that needed the story. Maybe it was the Kef of the group that needed the story, like you said, to you know, and Ka was just demanding that once he started it, Ka was like, no, you started, you got to finish it, you know. No, I kind of like that. Yeah. All right. So let's see.
Hey, Joe. Say hi to Joe.
Yes, I had John.
Yep.
Oh, we got another celebrity. What's up, Neil?
Rats.
Rats. I don't think there was any rats in it. I don't remember any rats.
Not in this book.
All right. So I want to say one of my last questions, and this one's kind. I don't know about. So we have a scene with my dude, finally by name, Randall Flagg. He's known by many names throughout the story. We got Walter. Yeah, I'm drawing a blank. He's got like 4 names at this point. But finally, we learn. You know, we get his new. You know, but we know at this point in the story because so far up until this point, he was supposed to be dead, right? The last time Roland saw him was at a campfire, and then he found some skeleton. So this is the first time officially he's popped up since then. Okay, so during that scene, we had a small palaver, a bunch of nonsense, really. I don't know how the audio part did the yak 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 with the newspaper and the, but
Yeah.
I love I love Randall. Okay, so in that moment, right, Roland realizes something, and he realizes that he doesn't just have a magical weapon, which Randall states that he's protected by. He can't shoot him with his magical L, you know, guns. But Roland pulls out the Ruger, and the book states that if he was a quarter of a millisecond like faster, he would have actually been able to shoot Randall. And in that moment, Randall literally vanishes in a smoke. But before he does, he shrieks in pure terror. Why? Why was Randall Flagg so scared of Roland pulling a regular gun on him? Maybe. What was it? The regular gun that scared him? Was it the fact that he had seen throughout? You know, let's hear. I'm gonna go Phil on this one. What's
I
up,
hadn't
Marissa?
given this part a whole lot of thought. Obviously, if he's scared, I don't think it so much has to do with the weapon, but maybe Roland is more powerful than he thinks he is, or maybe Roland can stop or kill Randall, but he doesn't realize that yet.
I will reflect. There's got to be the word of this unit tonight. Okay, so during the first palaver, that's kind of how the first incident ended. Was Roland reaching forward and trying to grab Walter, and Walter literally like vanished backwards before Roland could grab him. And this time, Roland not being close enough, but knowing that he could shoot him, and literally, you know, pulls both guns and tries to shoot him, and he does the same. This time it has smoke, and you know, because he's literally doing the Wizard of Oz thing. But it's almost the same thing, except the first time he was trying to grab him, and this time he's trying to shoot him. But almost a reflection of that same moment that we had with Walter. What you got, Trev? You got why do you think what's with Walter? Because and I'll lay on some other stuff. Walter comes off big and bad, not scared at all, like to the point where, like, I mean, he even knows the bullets that were in Roland's, magical gun kind of thing. But all of a sudden, Roland
Maybe
pulls.
along the lines of what Phil's saying, maybe it more has to do with Roland's intent, and he felt that Roland's intent was there. So that's what scared him, because if Roland has the intent, then he can kill him. But it's almost like he put a mental block on Roland, letting him know that you can't kill me. So Roland has that thinking, but if Roland doesn't think that, then he can't. You know what I mean? Maybe along those lines.
I do, and that's funny that you kind of bring that up, because there is another famous book that uses that ideology a lot, and we do know that guy is the opposite guardian of our beam that we're on. His name would be Pennywise, the spider, and he likes to play on like intent and like what you believe in and what is able to believe. So I do like that. Let's go with Steve. Which could.
I'm thinking that Walter has like magic sense, so he can tell when something is
Oh, I
magical
like
and
that
what's not
too.
magical, and he
He's
senses
got
that
like.
the Ruger is one that can actually hurt him, but the stuff that belongs in that universe he's immune against, whether he was given that gift or he knew about it. But as soon as something came in from another universe, now he was vulnerable to it. So there, that's what I think.
I
And it
like
scared
it.
the shit out of him because he knew that thing could actually kill him. But he just got lucky again. Someone stepped in because Roland couldn't get it out fast enough, and he would have been toast.
Yeah, he had the Spidey sense going. I
Yep.
mean, he had like magical perception. Yeah, because I mean, you're talking about, we already know Roland's speed, and that's magical in itself. And the fact that he was a quarter of a millisecond faster than Roland to do that whole scream, smoke, fade out. I mean, it's not one thing. He's not just backing away. He does like a whole like
He's
like
teleporting.
straight up magician, like boo, smoke bomb. You know,
Yep.
Aaron,
Doing the
what you got?
Batman thing.
Right?
Just that he's scared just because maybe he foresaw it a way that should have played out, and maybe that wasn't the way he'd foresaw it, and so something that was just different than what he had planned, and that scared him because he thought he was sure with his plan.
Back to the free will and free choice thing. I like it. I like it.
I like that.
That is a good thing too, because maybe in another universe, Jake didn't take that gun, and he never had it. He never brought it across. So that's why Walter was so confident that that gun was never there, so it wasn't a problem.
I will like to throw out, though, there is one like kink in the. Okay, so we at this point we do know that Walters has and does move from different worlds. Like when he talks to Roland in his quartet specifically, he references things from our world. Talks John Wayne, same Blaine, right? Not only that, but in this moment, with in the Wizard of Oz moment specifically, because they are literally living in the whole Wizard of Oz moment with the TikTok man. Like he knew what went down with Blaine. He to the point where he used the route map, his voice, mannerisms, the John Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
So we do know that this man travels and not just in other worlds, right? Because we start out the journey and we're in the stand, and during this journey we hear of I don't remember how she's referenced. If somebody can, but an older colored black woman of the
Yeah.
good, and
Yes.
we hear of the walking dude of the
Yep.
bad, which
Mhm.
at the end of the story we learned is Randall Flagg. He goes by the walking dude. Um, so
What's
my
her
thing
Was
name?
it
is what?
Abigail?
Abigail. Yeah, that's what her name
Yeah,
was.
yeah, that's Abigail. They don't
Another
reference her by name, but they
No.
do. If you've read The Stand, you know who she is. The elderly colored lady. Yeah, I love Abigail. Okay, so my thing is my chink in the strain is you're talking about somebody that walks through worlds, right? And let's go back to the whole Blaine thing. Well, maybe like Walter did that, right? Because he's able to move through worlds. So maybe like at some point, especially when they went through that part with the wolves stuff with the electricity, maybe they weren't necessarily like powering up, but maybe that was something that like Walter, like, it was part of the plan, but like to get them off the beam kind of thing. But like, I never took it as like Randall was scared of the gun. Because again, this is somebody that's moved through worlds to the point where like he's the one that killed Jake and that New York, so he'd know about those guns, right? I don't know. Food for thought kind of thing. I want to
So
say, I want to say that he wasn't scared. I want to say it was all like magician, pizzazz or whatever, and like he needs to keep leading Roland on, kind of thing. There is some conflict for us constant readers because we kind of know some things about our magician friend, but
It makes
uh,
more
for now,
sense.
for now, we'll leave it there.
so whenever Blaine, whenever they're getting charged up, they went through a door there.
They did. They went through it's a waterfall that was in the shape of a gate, and as they were passing through, it had like massive metallic wolf like heads that surrounded
Hmm.
this waterfall. It implied the name, and
So
as they
so
powered
like,
through,
do they go through another door to leave, or is this palaver their door?
there's some other things that tie into the story, like the thinnies that are all around this story. But we do know what a thinny is at this point. A thinny is a very thin space between worlds, to the point where the things that are inside the thinny, because it's perceived that this thing is alive, that's not really the case. It's more like the thinny is a membrane in the fabric of reality, and there's things on the other side of the reality that are trying to come through, and those are the things that Roland and his group are seeing on the other side. They haven't fully made it through, but somehow that it's so thin that they can pull stuff through, kind of stuff, because it's perceived that they were eating. And okay, so I want to say that plays a major part into like the whole Blaine and how they get off trail, and like what they like, because they went through just a really bad distorted, the world has moved on part of the story kind of thing. But it could go either way. The gate can be seen as like what was told, but we do know that Blaine lies, and he lied a bunch. um so you could see it as they just went through a gate, and it's exactly what Blaine says, that it was a power source, and that's how he powered up, which kind of makes sense, but in all reality, it doesn't make a lick of sense. Like, why would a moving, like, why would it need to power up that way? Why wouldn't it? I don't know. Um, I want to believe it's the other way, like that they went through a door, and or the thing. I don't know. There is no like definite answer there. But the very last thing is the afterword, and I kind of failed at telling the people, that the new readers, because the afterword should not have been read. But at this point, it's not so bad. Stephen King spoils a lot, specifically the next two books, very loosely. Like, if you don't know what he's talking about, it's not like major. But he does reference like four characters that we are about to meet in the next couple of books. Um, I don't know why it's even there, because it's in the older book too. So I don't know. But yeah, like the last 30 pages is the afterword and him telling like, hey, you know, I'm finally getting to write the story. I didn't think I was gonna write it. You know, I don't know. But that's basically the end of the story. New readers, what, Trev, I kind of know your thoughts on it. Phil, what did you think about this addition to the Dark Tower series?
It was a little frustrating, to be honest with you, at times. I loved it and I hated it. I felt like it was slower than the prior books. I'll say this: it did a good job of kind of sucking it into exactly the moment in the story. About midway into this part of the reading, into the second part of the book, I had basically completely forgotten that we were not in the present, and it didn't occur to me until just they interject a spot where Eddie kind of stops the story and asks the questions. Oh yeah, I forgot. Roland is retelling this story. I'll say this: it changed, as I've been saying, my perspective of Roland, and it's kind of led me to form a theory about Roland that, at least in the first book, makes a whole lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm kind of watching him like, all right, what is he really driving at?
Trev?
The one thing that caught me off was the fact that his need for the Dark Tower came from the
The
grapefruit,
grapefruit, like a bad
which
source kind of thing.
was very interesting to me.
It's something we
Because
didn't talk about. That's kind of brought up. I guess we mentioned it real quick, but throughout the story, and Trev's even mentioned this. But throughout the story, the grapefruit is seen to show like evil intent through Rhea, and it's mentioned through, I mean, even Marathor and through his dreams, kind of stuff. Even when Jonas grabs it, it goes into an obsession, you know, greed kind of thing. But then we get Roland at the end, and we see him go through the grapefruit successfully 3 times. Right, the first time he's just lost and shown a conjumble of stuff, which we know as real future because he's shown Oi and Susanna and stuff like that. All right, so the second time he goes in the grapefruit, he literally like controls it to the point where like it's not showing him bad stuff. It is showing him like Susan and stuff like that. Like and Trev was asking, you know, whether it was like a magical thing that Roland is able to do. Technically, I don't have any like there is no like at least I don't have any knowledge on why Roland was able to do this at the end or what was the intent. You know, maybe it was an evil intent thing, but as far as reading it, it just didn't come off as evil intent. Any thoughts on that? Mm. It's kind of open, and I don't think that I want to say there is no like definite answer on why. I want to say it's the wielder on the other side of it, which we do learn a little more about as we go forward. Not in the next book; it's like a couple of books later. But
See,
that is it. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, go ahead. You go ahead.
I was going to say it does bring up something that some people kind of casually go over because throughout the whole book, the grapefruit is shown, you know, in a bad light. And there is that one moment at the end where it does show Roland a bunch of good stuff. Even all the futuristic stuff is, I mean, technically the grapefruit was like, hey, you're about to have some new friends in the future. Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily, it doesn't sound so evil, you know, like, hey, you're going to have a friend in a wheelchair and a guy, you know, I mean, you
maybe
know, it
that
could
has
have,
to go back to the fact that he's an agent of the white. So maybe he, even though it's the pink, it's
I
more or
like that.
less pulled more
Maybe
toward the white.
maybe the wielder of the grapefruit, depending on their alignment, you know, it worked differently because Rhea was evil. It showed her those evil things, you know. Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So, as the grapefruits, are these things sentient, or is it just somebody on the other side controlling those things? That's something that was never really resolved, right? See, I always perceived it as those things are sentient themselves, like they're a
I want to
living
say
thing.
in the
Mm.
book it's answered as both because Rhea does say that it's alive. We do know that it's eating off her. It drains
Yeah,
her like literal life force,
like a vampire.
and and we do know, constant readers know that I mean, and I've said this during the stream that someone is on the other end of it. Um, so it's kind of both. I want to say, I mean, they are being wielded like weapons, and they are alive at the same time. Maybe like slaves, going back into, maybe there are creature things inside of them, that Merlin trapped.
Or some kind of AI like Blaine, right?
That too. Old
Mm.
gods, they were, merging technology and magic.
That's right. So something that's gone insane over time. They had a good intent when they were first created, and they've been corrupted from the time. And again, wielders over the centuries, because they said that they've come into many hands over the time. It's
hmm
amazing they've never been broken.
Well, we do know that, well, the other ones, just not we do know that, well, originally there were 13 of the grapefruit. And I think in the story, in this one, it stated that there's four known, like Black 13, grapefruit,
Yeah.
and two other
One's in
ones.
Lud.
hmm
And they didn't
Yeah,
say
one
which
was
one
in
was
one.
in Lud.
I bet you, you could guess. I'm pretty sure it was the color red for rage,
Yeah, could very well
Hmm.
be.
or
Velcro
maybe
fly, baby.
brown for doo doo actions, or caca. No. Um,
There you go.
oh, all right. So last but not least, let's get some predictions from our new readers. Let's go, Trav. What do you think the next book and the story? What are we about to see?
I don't know. This one's kind of left. This
I'll
is
give you the easy one. We're going back to our present day,
mhm.
and this one was a half action, half story book. So the next one's pretty much going to be an action. I will say there is a big
I'm
chunk of this where it's story.
I'm hoping
Because
for more of an adventure with creatures and obstacles when it comes to that. More of a physical obstacle.
what about the tower? You think give me some predictions on that. You think we're going to make it to the tower? You think
I don't think
soon?
we'll
You
make it to
think
the tower yet. No. There's seven. There's seven, and the eighth book is like a what?
yeah, the eight's just a
Just an extra one. So we're on book five. I don't think we'll make it to the tower. Book five.
okay. Okay, Phil.
I think this next book is not going to necessarily focus on our current party. I think you're going to see a chunk of it work on some other characters we have yet to meet, and then at some point tied into our quartet. Um, I do think that, and I think part of that is going to be a little bit of misdirection, just because I feel like King has a knack for not only changing the theme of each book. Each one could stand as a totally different story in itself, but also just as a rhythm of the story in itself. And again, that's part of a little bit of misdirection, a little bit of, so whenever all these characters do meet up, you see how they relate to one another, kind of going back with how the beams relate to each other. I think if we do see any of the tower in here, it's going to be minor. I don't think you're going to see anybody necessarily reaching or at least entering the tower quite yet. But I think I think this is going to be more about world building, I guess you could say, if anything else.
Phil. 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 If you knew. Yeah, you got the thumbs up from Steve. And you are spot on a couple things. Yes, we are going to get some misdirection. Yes, the genre is about to change again. I could say you're kind of off on one thing. This next book will focus heavy on our group. I can spoil and say we will get a lot more knowledge of the tower in this next book.
Hmm.
But world building is the words I would use.
Mhm.
Um, no, okay. So constant readers. Me, Aaron, and Steve. What were your thoughts rereading this book? What were your original? Did you like this chapter in the story originally? How was it on this read? Did you have the same thoughts?
It was good. I picked up a few more things than I did last time. Just I kind of had a better understanding of how things were gonna go, and yeah, it was better to comprehend, better under once you know it, then it's better. Like the second time, you kind of understand it even more.
I like the
Steve?
second part of the book a lot better. The first
Oh
part
yeah.
I don't like. I don't like the whole building up and the Susan getting
Uh,
killed and
Yeah.
stuff. That just irritated me. So reading it separately, I've read this thing a dozen gazillion times.
yeah, I think this
And
is the fourth time.
it's the battle part that I really want to get to. Actually, as a matter of fact, usually when I read the book, I skip over a good chunk of the
Get to
beginning of it. And I
the
get right into the meat and potatoes of it.
It's
one
on
of
the
my favorite
shorter
scenes
end
is
of the book of all of them.
It's my least
I,
favorite for sure.
okay.
Yeah.
I want to say when I first originally this book, it was when it came out, and I was like 16 at this time, and I was romantic and blah blah blah. So I want to say like I love this the first time through. I can say I wanted more of a medieval like kind of past, and we got the whole like. I mean, now as a grown up, it makes a lot of sense with the spaghetti western, like the influence on that. But like this read, oh, it was tough, man. That like uh, the just the romance part of it and having the knowledge of going through the book. I can say it's the same with Steve. Like I wanted the like action scenes and the like the world building scenes, and that was about it.
And you're right. I'd like to see more of the medieval stuff because I want to. I want to see more of Gilead and what what the castle looks like and their defenses and all that stuff that they
I,
never talked about.
I can say originally reading this, when because it was stated. I don't know if y'all remember, but we knew that we were going to get a prequel before we got this book, right? So my original thinking was it was all going to be set in Gilead with that medieval King Arthur-ish, and that's kind of what I wanted. Um, I could say it's not what I wanted. It didn't fail in that regard. I mean, you read this thing and it feels like an old timey Western, spaghetti.
Hmm.
I mean, the whole book does, even up until the climactic end, even like the solution with the Athene, even though the Athene is this supernatural element, that the whole, I mean, it's straight up that the battle of Thermopylae with 300, even the cork bottling to the canyon and everything.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
Are we going to
but
get more of a direct link to knighthood and Arthurian legend? I remember in one of the past episodes, you guys talking about that a little bit.
hmm um, I'm drawing a blank at how much more we get from that. I want to say we get a little more, but I want to say that's where the comics come into play. A lot of the lore and like especially when it comes to the Arthurian legend part of it, a lot of that is in the backstory. It's not even the main part of the comics. The each comic features a backstory, and
Yeah.
they're all these like they're actually like written stories. Some of them have art, but it's more like a book.
Yeah. They're
Um, and
novels in the back of it, basically, is what they
yeah,
are.
and that literally has like a lot more. Like to the point where you get like, and one of my favorite stories
It
is
fills in
with
all the cracks from every single book. All the information you want to know is in the comics.
Hmm.
It
and
fills
you
in everything. It fills all the details. And Stephen King had a direct line to the writers that were doing this. He approved the entire story.
Yeah, it's him and Robin Forth. I love her, Robin. She's so creative when it comes to all this.
Hmm.
She's the one that did all the. She's the one that did the compendium and comprised all the knowledge and put it in one book. She is his second in command. But yeah, she wrote a lot of the. Like, I mean, you get full on like stories on Merlin, King Arthur, stuff like that. I will tell you that and with all spoilers aside, that book 8, the There and Back Again story, um, heavily features Merlin in the story. I will give you that. Um,
Hmm.
But as far as like how much more, like kind of linked to the Arthurian legend, besides them, like relating Roland to Arthur, not a whole lot much more. Not too much more. We get a little bit, and in the next book we get a little bit more. In the next book after that we get a little bit. But I will say that is a part of the story that I always wanted that we don't get a lot of, is the medieval-ish part. But I will say, if that's a part of the story that you really like, then you will love one of the stories that is heavily referenced and directly ties into this book. That's The Eyes of the Dragon. That's Stephen King's like specific fantasy book, and it does directly tie to this book, to the point where we learned that that's where Jonas was from, was from The Eyes of the Dragon. The land that's in that story, that's where Jonas was originally born and raised. But I mean, all spoilers aside, that's where, I mean, Walter's the main bad guy, or not Walter, but Randall. Randall's the main bad guy in that book. But guys, that is this book. Man, this night was fantastic. There was
Everybody's
so
on point tonight, man. This is awesome.
hell yeah.
You
I
guys
wish
were
Nama.
all over it.
I wish Nama was here, because there were so many biblical references. I mean, they kept going back to the Lord Perth, which is specifically like, I mean, but there were a lot, and I was hoping Naman would kind of like lay on maybe some ones that I missed. I don't know. He's been pretty on point on those. But yes, okay. So our next, in 2 weeks, we are starting the Wolves of the Callan. This is the next big boy in the series. It's about the same size as the book we just read, which was the big boy. This book, all these, they have that caveat where it's like they're either loved or hated kind of thing. I want to say no book in the series except for the last book is the one that's hated, but I mean, I generally love this book. I like it because it goes, we're back on the path with our main group, and that's this one, I believe, is an action book with a chunk, and then it's kind of a story. But for the most part, this one's one of the action books, and that's kind of why I enjoy this one. I will say this one, it's going to flip some genres. I want to say that, and we get a little more of the mythical and magical in this one. I'll say that.
Oh yeah,
Dope.
it's good.
Dope.
It's a good one.
Things get weird.
Let
Yes,
me give you
yes.
one final thought. My whole theory that occurred in this book, I think Roland thought Susanna was going to be okay because he touched the grapefruit. And I think that when he did that, he became corrupted, which took him off his vision, his path. And I think a fair amount of time that we saw him in the first book was kind of a symptom of this corruption. And I think in these times when he's gung-ho and almost acting on instinct is when that corruption has kind of returned. So I think there's definitely going to be some members of the quartet who are going to get sacrificed. I don't remember, was there a part in one of the prior books that said that Susanna is pregnant, or Susan is pregnant?
Yep.
Yes, she is. At this point, it's still like loosely referenced, but like maybe 4 or 5 times, the book has told us that she is pregnant.
Yeah, and then the only other
Got
thing
that demon baby.
That's right.
Yeah, because I'm wondering if at some point in the book now she's going to get sacrificed. It made me even think at one point, were each of these characters different offshoots of Roland throughout different time periods, because none of them are from exactly the same time with the exception of Jake. Um,
Well, I will bring up that is brought up at the beginning of this book and the end of this book, that Roland still doesn't feel like to be a true member of the quartet because he is not from their winds or wers.
right. And the only other thing I was trying to draw some sort of association. Oh, I had questioned, is the thinny kind of like the anti-rose? Is it like the other side of a rose? Or is the rose just basically a form of the thinny in the real world? I know Eddie always associates roses with the tower. I don't know if there's a connection that way with the thinny. That was just a random thought I had here. And I was trying to figure out if there's a way to associate the rhyme that Susanna kept saying, the bird, the bear, the hare, and the fish, with the members of the quartet, because they're, with the exception of well, I guess you could say again, Roland doesn't see himself as a member, but you have four other members of the quartet, four animals.
Mm-hmm. 4 protectors.
Yeah.
4. I want to answer your questions, but then at the same time, we're about to find some of that out.
Okay, don't answer it then.
But I want to say some of the things. I don't know if we ever get like a definite. Some of the things he's very good at the world building, and some of the times he's not. He didn't want to go full on JR, so a lot of the world building he's really loose with. So sometimes he does leave that up to imagination. And when it comes to the thinnies, I want to say that's one of those moments where it's just left up to your imagination kind of thing. Like, but I want to say I do have an answer for you, but I don't want to give it yet. There is an answer,
That's fine. Yeah.
but it can go either way. Like you can, in that sense, because there is an element that we haven't seen yet that ties with the thinnies, and we've kind of seen it a little bit. It hasn't been named yet, but there's a whole nother thing that we haven't seen yet, which we're about to see, and it has a specific name. It starts with a T for just like the thinny, but once you kind of get that element to it, what the thinnies are kind of make a lot much more sense. Like,
Well, they gave it away a little bit with the bars and the palace, and you
I
look
always thought
inside
it
of those
was
bars. What was inside those bars? They
Right.
told us.
Yeah.
I always
the
thought it was
whole
like each rose corresponds to each universe, and the Dark Tower is collapsing on itself. So more roses are appearing around the Dark Tower, and they're being taken from these other universes.
I do like that, but you
That's
are
cool.
well. I
And
can
each
say you
time
are
that happens, a little thinny appears.
That's cool.
you are right about that. That every rose does represent like a universe, like that part. And I mean, you could be right about the other part that the more roses there are, is the more universes that have fallen. Like, I mean,
Yep.
It's like
And
I
then,
said, some things don't have answers.
yeah, the fabric of reality is stretched thin between the universes, and that's what the thinnies are. And you can
My
hop over from one universe to the other.
with that we and to the point where like it's known throughout Midworld because we have the Manning, right? And the Manning, they know about the doors and the old ones and
Mm-hmm.
I want to say the only chink in my thing is that there are previous talks of the tower, and every time that it's talked about in the past, the roses are there. Roland even states that he thought that it was blood, in his younger years, but now as an old, he realizes it was roses. So I want to state that you're right about like the half of that, but maybe the roses are always there. They just represent the whole macroverse as itself. I think if the roses started disappearing, that could be the danger thing. That could be like, if a rose disappeared, that would be the end of a universe or whatever. Hmm. But there's a lot that's still unexplained. There's a lot we're gonna get as we go forward. Like, if we ever make it to the tower, kind of thing. I can't say yes or no. Anybody want to throw those predictions on? Anybody? Any thoughts on who's gonna make it to the tower? Is Roland gonna make it? Is the whole quartet gonna make it with Roland? What about Oi? He's gonna make it to the. Any predictions?
I think
I think
Roland's
they're
going to
all
make
gonna,
it there
they're all gonna
solo.
make it.
Roland solo. Okay.
Yep.
Trev.
I think they're all gonna make it.
Ooh, I like that one. That's what
I
I
was
want.
about to say, can anyone predict any tragedies?
Right.
Oh, I think everybody's gonna die.
Think they're gonna
Everybody?
all make it.
Bleak.
Game of Thrones, baby. Don't
Right.
love any
No-
character.
No one's-
I
Sacrifices
got-
to restore
I gotta
the
step away,
universe.
guys.
Yeah, it's that time.
Have a
I-
good night. Thanks.
thanks,
Good
Aaron.
night, Aaron.
Yeah, we're at the end. I've just been kind of rambling. I don't know, but that is this episode. I want to thank the panel for. I mean, y'all were on fire tonight. And I'm
Damn
glad
right.
we're finally done with that book and moving on to the next one. In 2 weeks, we will be here for the first part. I don't have the checklist here with me, but I think it's the same thing. We're reading up to like pages 340 or 360, something like that. But we will be back in 2 weeks to talk about the Wolves of the Calla. Until then, long days, pleasant nights, food for your crop. Bye, everybody.